AI is everywhere right now, but here's the truth. Most leaders will never turn it into real revenue. Today, you're going to hear from a CTO who's closed over $50 million in deals. You heard that right, 50 million. And he's showing you exactly what they're missing. Welcome to the 30-minute hour. It's the leadership podcast for CEOs and senior executives who don't just talk strategy, they execute at the highest level. I'm your host, Eric Twiggs, your procrastination prevention partner. Joining me as always, you know him as the super CEO, the business strategist extraordinaire, and all-around good guy, Ted Fells. It is indeed a happy Monday. Your sound didn't come out clear. Hopefully that's not something on my end. Can you say happy Monday one more time? I want to make sure I'm hearing you okay. All right. For some reason, I'm not hearing that.
Me either.
Bob,
Yeah,
did you hear?
I hear you now.
We can hear you now. All right.
Monday again.
Happy Monday. All right. It's a happy Monday, but apparently it's an IT Monday. There you go. we have some of the most knowledgeable people about IT on planet Earth. And we're having IT issues. All right. Yeah. But now this will be an episode you'll remember for a long time. We're talking today about how tech leaders turn AI into $50 million deals. So you definitely want to pay attention because it is about execution. It's not just about strategy. So we're going to get into that, the nuts and bolts. And we've got the ideal person to lead this conversation. So Ted, we just go ahead and get right to it. We're not going to belabor the point.
Jump right into it, Eric.
That's right. We're just going to jump right.
Eric, people got stuff to do, man.
Yeah, stuff to do.
Go and get into it.
They got hockey games to watch, all kinds of stuff. I'm just going to jump right into it. All right. So imagine spending nearly 26 years at IBM leading global cloud strategy and driving over $100 million a year in revenue. And then taking that experience and turning AI into $50 million plus deals. Well, that's what our guest did. I mean, he's done it already. He's the CTO, he's a CISO at Onyx. Please join me in welcoming to the show, Bob McGinley.
Gentlemen, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Welcome. Yeah, definitely excited. I've been looking forward to this conversation. So let's get into it. So you spent nearly 26 years at IBM, the leading global sales cloud sales, and delivering over 100 million annual, like we said in the introduction. What was that moment when you realized that technology alone doesn't close deals?
Yeah, so I got the opportunity early in my career to work with some really senior and really strong sales guys. And there was a couple things these guys were doing that I really picked up on early, and I carried it forward the rest of my career. And the one thing I'll tell you about is a story where it was in public sector. So I was here in the state of Washington. We had a very big contract here with the state. So, there's not a lot that you can really do at the state level and federal level as far as, taking people out. You're not even allowed to buy people a coffee, right? So you have to be very careful about the relationship and how you manage it. And we had sold a deal to the state. And what I noticed, the guy who was in charge of that sale, the rep at the time, was not only, going in and trying to sell IBM and our services, but he worked with the director who made the decision to hire IBM, right? And back in those days, there was this slogan, right? You never get fired for bringing in IBM, right? Which I don't think that is might be valid anymore, because I know some people who have gotten fired.
For bringing an idea.
Not quite as true today, but okay.
But this guy his whole thing is he flipped out on its head and said, you're going to get promoted when you come in with IBM, right? So he took this guy who was a director level, and then he started actively lobbying to get that guy into the next role with the state or, with another entity. So it wasn't just that, we did the sale and then he just went and sat on his laurels and drove around in his BMW for the next couple of years. He was actively becoming a kingmaker, right? So he got kind of developed a relationship with this guy and got known as someone who had, relationships higher up in the hierarchy of the state, right? He knew all the top players, and he actively went and got this guy to the next level in the business. He knew that the CIO was about to take another position, so he started working the talk track around the coffee machine and saying, yeah, I don't know who you guys are looking at for that, because Joe over in that department is doing a fantastic job. He should really be considered. And it's kind of struck me at that time. It's like the relationship is more than just the sale, right? It's I'm going to help you in your career. There's ways that you can help me in mine, and you can help IBM. And it just kind of spread from there. And I started seeing it in other people, that they don't just kind of sign the deal and then walk away. They go in and make sure that customer's happy, that they're getting everything they need. If stuff goes sour, and it always does, right? They make amends, so they find ways to kind of take care of the customer. So they'll throw in a better deal next time, or they'll bring in a couple resources to kind of deal with the problem at hand. But they always kind of were on top of things, and they were always making sure that the customer knew what to expect, and that they always had a single throat to choke, right? And he was that guy that if stuff goes bad, I don't care if it's Saturday afternoon, you pick up the phone, you call me, and I'm going to be in your office, and we're going to come up with a plan to go deal with this issue. And that's kind of when I started picking up that sales is more than just going and talking about features and comparisons of products. It's really about the people that you're selling to and how you make them successful in their business with your products.
Yeah, it boils down to relationships. And it's interesting because, I mean, our previous guest on episode 414, it was all about relationships and emotional intelligence. And so what, kind of shifting gears a little bit, what role would you say is your ability to establish the right relationships, whether it's customers or people that can help you? What role has that played in your career?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's it kind of, it took my career kind of jettisoned when I got really strong on the technical side, and then I started picking up the business acumen, right? And I started getting more into the financials aspects of the business, like how do we price deals, how do we get the prices down, and I kind of picked up on how to meet the needs of the customer with our services and products that we were facing. And then the other thing that I kind of dug into, and we'll talk about it a little bit more, I think, in some of the the conversation, is that I was always about trying to see where the business was heading and what we could do to kind of help get them there, right? So more than just kind of throwing products at the problems or people, it was really trying to say, what's your strategy? Where are you going? And then, how do we help you get there? Number one. And then number two, how do we get you to start realizing the art of the possible, right? What are your competitors doing? What are other people in the space doing? And where are you in that, that measurement or that scale, right? Because chances are, and if you're going in and talk to a customer, you can kind of spin this, right? But they're always going to be a little bit behind the curve somewhere, and that's where you kind of come up with that plan to say, let's get you ahead, let's do it in a way that's cost effective, and then now you can really start to strategize about how you grow your business.
So it sounds like you really focus on trying to establish a real true partnership with that client.
Yep.
Right? You're saying how to help their organization, how to help that individual, maybe personally or professionally as well. And kind of where you started off from the very beginning is, within the confines of what you can actually do as a vendor, right, within the
Yep.
rules, right? Because you help them take their organization to the next level, or you just happen to share that there may be another opportunity that's a good fit for you. I mean, there's value to that relationship other than just, like you said, pushing your product.
And I've carried that network all through my life, Ted. So I still do, right? I'm still in contact with the people at those places that I worked 20 years ago. And I still, if there's something that pops up in my network, and I'll go and kind of connect people, right? It's not I'm not the kingmaker. I was never that guy, right?
Yeah.
I don't own a BMW, and
Yeah.
it was always. But I still look out for the folks that I've been connected with in my career, because you never know, right? I may have to go back to the well at some point, and ask for a favor, right? And
Yeah.
Yeah. So you said something that's a twiggable quote. You said realizing the art of the possible. I think that was a great
So,
quote.
so Eric,
Yeah.
I thought Bob may have like frozen for a minute.
I
I think.
spun a little. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
heard you.
Yeah.
I heard you. It's just my
Okay.
camera.
Yeah. Yeah. I was trying
Okay.
to give time for it to come back, but all right.
Uh,
But no, that was a twiggable, quite a great quote. You said realizing the art of the possible. So you started as a chief architect, and then you go on to become this global sales leader. So was the mindset shift focusing on the people and relationships and all of that? Or was there something else that allowed you to go from like building these solutions to selling $50 million deals? What was it?
No, for me, it was really the experience of battle, I would say, right? It was I lived in the trenches in delivery. So anyone who's in technology, right? You've got there's two sides to the coin. There's sales where you make all the money, and then there's delivery where you do all the work, right?
where you gotta live with all the
Yeah.
promises that
You
the
got to
sales.
actually go deliver the crap that
Sure.
the guys sold. That
That's right.
we in actuality we probably really can't do what they promised, right? So this is where you got to close the gap a little bit. So
Yeah.
I had that time, right, and I had the battle scars. And then once I started kind of going out in front of customers and talking to them and their technical staff, it's like I could relate to them very easy. And then I was able to kind of weave their stories into my presentations. So, I used to go around the room, and one skill that I picked up very early in my career is I'm really good at remembering names. So when we go and do introductions and I find out what your role is, I pick out the guys in the room who I want to kind of bring into my story. And then I'll tell, about their trauma, the things that they're going through, and I'll kind of relate that back to what we're selling and saying, I know Jim and Rajesh over here are spending their Friday nights worrying about all the backups. How are they going to get the stuff recovered? Are our batch windows going to close on all the weekly data correctly? What if that problem went away for them and they had that time free to go do other things, right? What would they be focused on? And that's kind of the art of the possible, is you give the customer this vision to say, man, what would we be doing if we weren't spending all this time doing all this manual stuff, right? And then once you kind of get that mentality going, that's kind of where they start saying, there's a real possibility here that we could free up some resources. We could, get rid of some error prone processes that we have, and we could really get this business to take the next step. And that's kind of where that's setting the hook, right? Because other customers or other vendors are going to come in and just try to sell the product, right? It's faster, it's cheaper, it's got more bells and whistles, right? And you're coming in and saying, I'm going to get you to the next level of business. I'm going to get you that next 100 million of revenue, right? So let's go build that versus just another server with some products running on it.
Okay. All right. So when you break it down and you look at $50 million AI deal, I have to imagine there's two or three moves that you consistently get right that the typical person misses. What are those 2 to 3 moves that you get right when you're dealing with these deals?
Yeah, well, a lot of this is becoming AI specific, and a little bit um, technology specific. And there's certain things going on in the space that are happening now that I think people are starting to pick up on. And it really gets back to customer data. And if you're talking large deals, you're talking larger customers. You're talking $1 billion total value plus, right? So and then you have to be able to deliver the value of what that investment's going to bring. And there's ways that we can do that. But the thing that I think is really critical that a lot of people miss with AI is that there's a human component to it. And a lot of the everyone's trying to do AI. Everyone's just trying to spit something out, or they're putting it in their name. But what people tend to forget is that there's a human element to it as well. Especially because there's still a trust factor with AI where it's not always right. All right, and we call it hallucinations, but really it gets stuff wrong. Right, is really what it comes down to. So what we've kind of done is we build technical expertise into our services to enhance AI solutions. So we don't do just pure AI deals. We bring the experts that make sure the AI is actually going to be accurate. So if you're making large business decisions on the AI solution that you're betting on, they've got to be right? And you can't necessarily always rely on a model to give you the right answer because, frankly, they don't always get it right. So you have to have, we call it human in the loop, and you have to have the ability to go out and have someone who's still an expert in that field to kind of look through stuff and say, yeah, everything's right. And I kind of compare it to, doctors and, using AI to go generate, a medical evaluation for someone, right? I don't want to take AI at its word and then go take a bunch of medication that might kill me, right? So I want a doctor to actually look over what the recommendation was and say, yeah, this is, it's right about a couple things, but there's a couple things here we're going to adjust and we'll play with. So I think, for me, that's kind of the big one. The other thing is getting into privacy and how you deal with security and all the other stuff. If your solution is taking all your customer data and training on it and, trying to sell that information to other customers that may not be related to that customer, you've got a problem, right? So you've got to be able to guarantee that the models aren't taking private proprietary customer data and then using that to go build responses to other people who may be competitors. So it becomes a technique and an investment strategy for how you really privatize some of this stuff, and you make models that are specific for customers, and they really have no outside access. So those are kind of two of the big ones that we're playing with right now, and that's kind of how we go after the bigger deals.
So Bob, when we're talking about AI, let's say we have grandma on the line, and she's like, "What is AI?" Right? Betty, can you tell me what AI is? I'm hearing all this AI talk. What is AI? How would you define what AI is to that person that's been hearing it every place, but doesn't know really what it is in a layman's term?
The easy answer, Ted, and I would say I'm a little bit controversial in this regard, is that AI is search engine 2.0.
Okay. Grandma's still not sure what that means, Bob. So come on, break that down. Break that down a little more for Grandma now.
All right, I'm spinning a little. All right, so I'm back. So remember back in the late 90s when you had all these different search engines, right? We had Lycos, we had Web Crawler, we had
all that kind of stuff.
Yahoo, right? Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden Google came around, right? And Google kind of just sucked the whole market away. You probably don't use Yahoo to do searches anymore. I don't know anyone who uses Bing, right? But there was this consolidation at that point in time. And why? Because Google was giving the best results on searching, right? And what would you get back from that search? You get back a web page, right? And then you had to go to the web page itself and you had to go find what you were actually searching for. And sometimes it was what you were searching for, sometimes it wasn't, right? So what this generation of AI is doing is not just throwing you back the web page, it's going through those 20 different results and then specifically finding the content that you were asking about, right? And that's kind of, instead of having for you to go find that content, it's diving in a lot deeper, and then it's got an engine behind it based on probability. Not that you want to tell your grandmother about probability and statistics, but it's going back and finding that content for you, and it's able to get much more specific in what you're asking for. All right. And then the other thing is it's very conversational. So it keeps this idea of context. So if I ask it something and it doesn't give me exactly what I'm looking for, I can refine my question in real time and go get it more specific, right? So unlike Google, well, I can't say, yeah, sorry, that search didn't bring back what I wanted. Could you go and look for something that's, got this as a qualifier as well? I got to go do a whole new search and hope it comes back with a different answer. 9 times out of 10, it just shows you the same 10 websites, right? So to me, it's at its larger, broader implications, it's, how do you take search to the next level?
So when they're talking, I guess, like the generative AI and then the agentic AI, like
So those are more, I would put in the category of automation. So if you for these types of things, you give them access to certain types of data or content, and that content can be, a cloud environment. You can say, go do this work for me, right? But it's really just going and doing the same search, finding the instructions it needs. So it's going, if you're doing a bunch of stuff on Microsoft Azure, it's going into all the docs. It's finding, the relevant content for the question you asked. And then it's got the ability to go and reach out into that environment and actually perform tasks as an agent, right? As we would call it. So it's, taking the search engine part and then coming up with a plan for how do you go and implement certain parts of it. And then you give it access to some resources, and, then you hold on to your hat and hope you don't run yourself up $100,000 bill on Microsoft Azure. Right?
All right. I like how you broke that down. I think grandma would really
yeah.
be able to understand.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I think
Yeah.
grandma right now is getting on Chat GPT after what you.
Right now.
Yeah.
So you kind of covered it, but like, what are some other reasons that most of these AI initiatives never get to the point where they're generating serious revenue?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to you got to still have the expertise, right? I mean, you can't, and I see it all the time. You can't go and build a golf scoring program unless you know how to play golf, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and I think that's kind of where a lot of people get caught up with it. But there are products that have done really well. Like, we use lovable.dev a lot. I don't know if you've gone and played with that, but it's the craziest tool ever, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just builds these beautiful websites in seconds. But I guarantee you the guys who built that are all top-notch web developers. They're not a bunch of school kids that have never built a web page before who went and grabbed an AI model someplace and said, go generate a bunch of random HTML for me and make it look really good, right? They kind of trained it to be able to do specific things that in their experience made customers very successful. So to me, you have to have the back end capabilities, and then AI just really is a way of enhancing those and really scaling what you can do. So I promise you, like the guys at Lovable, if they didn't have the AI, they would all still be out there building websites. But what Lovable did and what the AI did is it gave them the ability to scale. So they don't have to go spend a whole day with a customer team trying to walk through what their design parameters were, what color scheme they wanted to use, what font, right? They kind of put all of that in the AI, and now those guys, all they do is go and train. They're not sitting there, trying to generate revenue by the hour, right? So you got AI that can now do all of the work that they're able to do for a lower price point, but now they've got this tremendous amount of volume.
Yeah, I mean the expertise component. I think this is a good takeaway because even like when you look at writing, for example, it's one thing to have AI, let's say, write you an article on something, but it's another thing if you really understand writing and sentence structure and everything else, it's going to
Yeah.
come out a lot better. And you can look at it and say, well, no, that's not. No, give me something better.
Yeah, this is happening in code right now, right? So you've got Claude Code, you've got GitHub Copilot, you've got all these AI application development tools. And I have a very close friend who's a senior engineer for a large development company, and he uses AI all the time, but he uses it to generate the code, and then he goes and reviews all the code, and he places the code into the application. He does not let AI do anything on its own because he knows how error prone it's going to be, right? So he has to go in and edit stuff all the time, but he's not having to go and write, tens of thousands of lines of code by himself. He can kind of get, the 70% of it done with AI. He just goes and makes sure that it's actually doing it the right way. And then he moves it into the application. And, he did 5 days worth of work in 3 hours.
Okay. Good stuff. So we're here with Bob McGinley. We're talking about how tech leaders turn AI into $50 million deals. So Bob, you've grown pipelines from under $1 million to nearly 10 million. Like, what's the difference between a technical sale and a strategic sale?
I'm spinning. All right. So yeah, that's a great question, Eric. The technical sale, and we kind of talked about it a little bit a while ago. Technical sale is, for me was always price point, features, support, all of those things. And you kind of go and compare 5 different products and you say which one is, the best for our particular need, right? And that's a very difficult place to be if you don't have a large differentiator for your product, right? So what I kind of learned in, I call it more value selling than strategic selling. And I do it the opposite way. I don't, and I taught my team this as well when I was leading sales. I don't come in with any products. I'm not doing any demos. I'm talking about business. I want to know where are you, right? Where do you think you are? What are you doing? And then what should you be doing? What are your competitors doing? And then I have a question that I always ask my customers at the end of these conversations, and it always kind of wins them over. And I'm a little bit dangerous in this regard, but I try to get customers to have a little argument in front of me, right? I try to get the room to kind of turn on each other a little bit. So I'll give you an example. I was working with a large bank in Canada, and I had gone and done some research. I used AI to do the research, right? And I found out that 70% of their total budget was going towards IT. And I was like, you guys are a bank, right? You're a financial institution. Why are you spending all this money on IT? It just seems crazy to me. And I said, your competitors are way less than that, right? They're in the 50% of the budget range. So you guys are, 15% higher over your average competitor. And, I work out in the math what that number might be, right? So say they're, 100 million a year company. I'm like, you guys could potentially, have a $15 to $20 million savings here. What would you be doing with that money if you could invest it back into the business? If you could look at new markets, if you could look at new opportunities, and invariably you'll get one of the guys in the room that'll turn to his colleagues and go, yeah, Jim, what would we be doing if we had an extra $15 million? Right? And that's when right? And then it's like, and then you get the responses, right? It's like, well, we would go back, we would really focus on customer service. we would really start to come up with, there's some products we have in the pipeline that we just haven't had the money to invest in yet, that we would go and really put some time and energy into, because we know they would be differentiators. And then it's like you got them thinking about those types of things. What could our business be versus, what kind of operating system am I going to need to run this product, right? And I think that's the mentality you kind of have to get into in sales these days, is you have to come in with ideas for customers. You have to come in with a place for them to kind of sync their vision a little bit and say, man, and not, you got to be sensitive to it as well, right? You can't come in as the know-it-all and say, this is what you guys should be doing. This is how you should run your business. The way I always approach it is, this is what I see in the market. This is what I see your competitors doing. And here's some ideas for you guys to consider if you did free up that 15 million. And that's when the conversation starts. Like, all right, let's talk about how we can get this done, and then go build me a roadmap for what that looks like. And here's the cool thing: is we already built the roadmap. We took it with us and we flash it up on the screen and say, all right, let's adjust it. Let's do it in real time. Right after 6 months, I get you the 15 million back. Now you can start investing. Where do we want to put the money? And I say we. Right? Because you're going to invest it with me. So that's kind of where the deal starts.
I hope somebody caught that, because I think what you just said is important when you're dealing with high level decision makers. That where you said, here are some ideas to consider.
Yep.
Because sometimes you can word it another way and leave the person thinking, oh, he doesn't think I already knew that. Oh, he doesn't know.
Yeah.
He's trying to tell me what to do. Now, I think that is hopefully somebody picked that. That's a little nuance. I think that can help somebody go from good to great. Thank you for sharing that. So something else I want to, here's another thing everybody talks about, right? It's almost becoming like a buzzword, right? Ted, I'm sure you've heard it before. Innovation, right? That's the thing. Oh yeah, it's all about innovation. So what do you see? I mean, you led these big teams. What do you see from the teams that just talk about innovation in comparison to the ones that actually generate return on investment? Like, what's the difference?
Man, that's a tough one, because you're right. It is a buzzword. Everyone's throwing it around, and it's almost overwhelming, right? And I'm fortunate to work with a great team at Onyx, and we are all innovators. And I would say sometimes that gets in our way, right? That we're almost innovating too much, and you really kind of have to step back and say, what's the market potential for these ideas? And is this really going to stick? So this is kind of where I've always been. It's one of the things we were really good at IBM, is like gaining market insights, and go out and talk to a customer and say, what do you think of this? Is this something you think that the market would be interested in? And that's kind of, getting back to that first question, right? You got those relationships. Your customers really appreciate when you come to them and ask them for their opinion and that kind of stuff. You kind of strengthen the relationship a little bit. So if you have those ideas and you think, you're whiteboarding and you're kind of, brainstorming, and you think you got something, go out and talk to someone about it and say, what do you guys think? And then see if they're interested in collaborating with you, right? What if we did this together? Would this be something you'd be interested in? And then maybe you get an investor in your idea, right? Or you get some insights that they come back and say, yeah, we tried that, didn't really work, thought it was going to be great, ended up being a huge waste of money. But if you went down this path instead, or if we had changed this, then you get some valuable insights that you may be able to use in gaining some traction with that idea. But I think that's where things tend to fall down. I see a lot of crazy things come out, and you just know that it's like, oh, what are these poor guys thinking, right? How much money are they gonna blow on this crazy idea? So I think just go. Everybody's so afraid that someone's going to steal their idea. I need to get a 40-page NDA out so you don't steal. Nobody wants to steal your stuff. Nobody wants to steal your bad ideas, right? So go talk to someone you trust. Go have a beer, a glass of wine. Go shoot the breeze and go and just that's where I think innovation really starts to gain traction, right? If you can sense that there's actually a market out there and you got people that are willing to kind of engage around that idea,
All right, looks like Bob is frozen in time for a moment here. We'll give him a second to get unfrozen.
Right.
Man, how much did I get out? Enough?
Yeah, I think so.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So question, when you start thinking about innovation, right? And everybody says they want that, right? All customers say they want it until they see what the price to pay is for innovation. And I'm not saying just, but it may be just change, right? People,
Yeah.
don't necessarily, do they really want change, right? Do they really want to go from 50 people to 5? Right? Because they go to lunch, they play golf with Jim every week, and now innovation will bring in a way that you may not necessarily need Jim to
Never
be in
say
the
that.
office.
Never
Yeah,
say that to a customer.
yeah.
No, what you say is you've got 45 people that are now going out and helping grow your market, right? Now you
So
got 40.
you're gonna repurpose them, is what you're gonna do.
Right.
Yeah,
Now they're more efficient, they're more effective, and now you can do things that you weren't able to do before. So now let's talk about what those things are, right? And how we can really take those 45 people and instead of just supporting your current customer base, let's go out and get more customers, right? Let's go scale the business. And that's kind of where you save the 45 people, and you're going to save the company some money because they only need 5 to do the current workload. But now you get the ability to grow, and you reskill, you get those guys out into a different place. They're going to be happier. They're potentially going to have new opportunities in the business, and now you can grow some leaders out of those 45.
So what do you think, Bob, of all these technology companies? We see it every day, and they're getting rid of thousands of people. You're like, man, like they're gonna have
Yeah,
thousands.
I worked at
All right,
IBM.
who are these people? Who are these 1,000 people that they're getting rid of, and what's the impact of that?
Yeah, that's so typically with those bigger companies, they're using that word innovation. They're starting all these little side projects, skunk works, we used to call them,
Yeah, yeah.
and they're realizing that there's not a market potential there, right? So they're abandoning stuff. And instead of repurposing some of those teams, especially when they start to see the economy turn, it's easier to jettison than it is to go repurpose. I think that's a lot of it. And then the other thing is, I think after time, you realize where the real skill lies in the organization and who the rock stars are. And you got to get rid of the dead wood at some point. And,
Yeah.
IBM, we stopped asking each other how many years we worked there. We started asking how many layoffs have you survived?
Oh wow.
Right.
Wow.
So I was at
Wow.
16 after 26 years. So that was,
Wow.
not those were hard times, right? But that's been going on since technology really got started. So I don't think that's ever going to change. It's just the way the business moves fast, skills change really quick. So you really got to be on top of what's going on in the world, and you can't rest on your laurels.
No, definitely not now. So Bob, people are now chomping at the bit. They're watching you, they're listening to you. They want to turn AI into revenue. They're ready to just step their game up now, just inspired by you. So, what's the first move they need to make this week to really start to turn AI into revenue?
So first move is right out of the gate. Let's go talk about what I was talking about before, right? You got a customer meeting coming up. What do you know about that customer? Where are they in their track, right? Who are their competitors? What are their competitors doing? How are they innovating? Where are they investing? Where are they spending money, right? What else is going on in the news? Have these guys had a problem? Have they had an intrusion, right? Did they get hacked and it got exposed in the media? So they're trying to regain confidence from their customer base. So find those things that are going on with that customer. You should, there's no excuse in the world. You can do it. I mean, I can do it in 15 minutes and prepare to walk into any client, and I can have everything I need to go and see their current worldview in no time, right? And that's kind of where you use that as the platform to go start talking about new ideas. Stay away from the product stuff. The product stuff is great. Everybody wants to get to the demo, but it's really more about, even what we're doing at Onyx. Where are you spending all the money, right? How many people do you have sitting around answering customer support tickets, right? What if I could have those people, we could turn those into salespeople and we could use those to grow the business, because all of your support now is built with an AI tool that generates 95% correct answers. So it's really kind of coming up with that idea approach and walking in and giving them some options other than the status quo. So that's point number one. Point number two, for revenue, and I would include, you can make a lot of revenue and still not make any money, right? So the other thing to consider there is profit and margin. And for me, that's kind of where AI really is. The strength is, especially if you're in the services business. So if you're in a business that you're selling people and skills and expertise, you're limited on scale, right? You can only hire so many people and pay them the rates that they're going, and scale the business up to a certain point. AI frees you from that. So that's kind of where you have to figure out, how do I strengthen my core group, right? How do I turn this consulting company into a partial AI company where I still have the expertise, right? I still got the people, but now I can scale infinitely, and I can go out and really kind of, use the skill and the expertise I have to train my models, make sure that they're as accurate as possible. And then I can go and broaden the business, and I'm not bound by how many bodies I can put in the floor, and I can sell for $400 an hour.
Yeah, you said something. There's another Twiggle quote, right? You said you can make revenue and not make money.
Yeah.
That is 100% true.
Yeah. So think of, that's where Onyx is really kind of focused, is those services companies that, they're growing the business, but they struggle to go find the right skills, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or, they struggle in retainment. So they got, people are bouncing and going and getting other jobs someplace because it's really competitive, right? Once you got the skills and the expertise, you can go anywhere and make your number. So, how do you use AI to fill that gap? And that's kind of where we step in and say, instead of having this whole platoon of people that have to sit there and respond to, customer requests all day, let's automate that. Let's train a model that can do, the vast majority of it. And then we free up those guys to go and do other things.
All right. Bob should be back with us here any second now. Looks like he's frozen again.
Man, it's almost like on a timer it's doing this to me. So Comcast must have something against me.
Okay.
They always freeze you in some of the most interesting facial expressions. So
thanks, Ted.
I said, man, he's really pausing for dramatic effect.
Right. He's trying to get that thought together. So,
I was like, man, what is Bob going to say next? I'm leaning in. But no, Bob, this has been a great conversation. And I think it's surprised some people, right? Because you look at it, a tech leader, someone with your technical knowledge, but how you really emphasize the relationships and the strategy and some of those other things. I think this was a very valuable conversation. How can people get more information from you? How can people connect? What's the best way for people to connect with you?
So, you can get to me through the Onyx team. So, getonyx.ai is our website. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm all over it. So my profile's out there. I have my own YouTube channel and I have my own podcast channel. I've been writing too much code lately to do much of that. So, I'm a little bit behind, but I've got some great content out there on sales, great technical content on a couple different things. But I'm really easy to find and get access to. So anyone wants to have a conversation or talk techie, I'm always willing to jump in and help. Okay.
Great. Thank you for sharing everything you shared. And speaking of sharing, those of you who are watching and listening right now, don't forget to share the show.
Share the show. Share it.
That's right. Don't
Share
keep
with
all
your
this
friend.
great information to yourself. Got to share the show.
Thanks, bro.
There you go. All right. Yeah, again, this has been a great episode of the podcast. And also keep in mind that we can be found on the audio podcasting platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of those great places. All you have to do is hit that subscribe button, and then that way you never miss a future episode. You'll get automatic notifications every time.
How many episodes have we had, Ed?
414. This will be
Wow.
415. This one right here.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Isn't that something?
I'm telling you.
Look at God.
You guys are good. This is really good. You got great questions, great content. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have come and spoken. So thank you very much.
You know, Bob, all those questions we send you in advance.
Skip right over them.
I don't even know the questions that get sent to you. We just go with it.
Nah, you guys are great. That was really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're a great guest. Appreciate it.
For sure.
Anytime. Have me back. If anyone wants to, find out some more, I'm more than happy to do
Don't
it.
say that. We need a guest for tomorrow.
That's right.
Hey Bob, what are you doing?
Let's talk sports tomorrow. How's that?
There you go.
There you go. All right. Well, that's our time for this week's episode. And as you're looking to turn AI into $50 million deals, please consider this. Don't allow perfect to become the enemy of progress, because your next level starts with your next step. Take care and have a great one.
Yeah.